Hello everyone, my name is Sniping is Fun, and I welcome you all back to my next The 5 list on my YouTube channel. I know I haven't done a lot of these lately. I've recently brought them back. It was on a hiatus for a good chunk of months there. I'm still in the middle of Season 2. I recently brought it back a few weeks ago, doing the 5 manga that need an anime adaptation. This one is going to be back onto the video game topics. And by the thumbnail, when I do change it in the name of the video below or wherever you're watching me, YouTube does a lot of crazy things anymore with where the things at, where the title's at. You should know what the name of what the topic of the video is, but I wanted to talk about it anyways and mention it because this is a topic I kind of been wanting to do a video on for a while. And it is a major thing in the gaming industry, from actual game companies to the gamers that play these games. There are video games out there and how they get received by the companies that make them, the gamers that play them, and the companies that also write entries and reviews and magazines and articles and stuff on video games and whatnot. There are, and as humans, we all have our own opinion on certain things, and there are video games out there that get a lot of negative views, as well as there's a lot of games out there that get a lot of positive views. And this list is going to be the 5 video games that I feel get a little too much hate. Now, are they perfect? Do they not deserve at least some sort of criticism, some sort of constructive criticism, something to them? Like, are they perfect? Is there not any problems to the games I'm going to be mentioning today? No, nothing is perfect. Nothing is flawless. But I do think the hate for these 5 games I picked are a bit much, and sometimes it's gamers or companies or something pushing a certain topic or a certain thing that's wrong with them and just cranking up to 11 when really it's probably like a 1 to 3, 5 type of range. It's not perfect, but it's a problem. They just nitpick on some stuff, and sometimes it's just, you're all gamers here. I'm sure if you're a fan of mine and watched my channel or come across this video and looked, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, you've come across this video, you're a gamer and have played video games for an extended period of time, you've come across people like this, and you probably have had games that you viewed probably like this. We all do. And that's why I'm just doing this video, because it's 5 games I feel get a little too much hate, in no matter who it's from or no matter for what reason. So without further ado, without this intro going on way too long, here's the 5 video games I feel get a little too much hate. And the first one is probably going to trigger some people because it's a series that is beloved by a lot of gamers, and the entry in the series received quite a bit of backlash for how they portrayed their main character. And I'm going with Metroid Other M. Now, I'm not saying this game is perfect. I just mentioned a minute ago that nothing's perfect. There is flaws, but I don't think it deserved as much hate as it got. A lot of the hate seems to come from the fact that how they portray Samus in this game. My main complaint about this game was mainly the controls. I feel it should have had the nunchuck to the Wii remote and played kind of like Metroid Prime, but 2D and in first person and third person. That's how I feel it should have been. It was only with the Wii, just singularly the Wii remote, and I think control-wise, that's what kind of annoyed me with the game. The actual gameplay and the actual story, I didn't really have too much of an issue with. But a lot of Metroid fans, a lot of Nintendo gamers and gamers in general had an issue with how they basically made Samus look too weak or too submissive to Adam. And stuff like that. And then first and foremost, this game takes place right after Super Metroid in the timeline, the storyline. This takes place probably days to weeks to months, right after. And in that game, she was on the verge of death from Mother Brain before the baby Metroid came in, and baby Metroid sacrificed itself to save her. It saw her as a mother figure, and she hated the Metroids, and she grew attached to this. So it's she was in a very weakened state when this game came up in the timeline of the story, as well as the fact that her meeting Adam after so long being her commanding officer in the Galactic Federation. He was like a father figure to her after Ridley killed her parents in the place where she lived and she was raised by the Chozos. Those two mixed together, she's human too. See, that's the main complaint I get, is people may say, oh, she's never acted like that. We've hardly seen in most Metroid games under Samus's helmet. She's human. She has emotion. She can get angry. She can get sad. She can get scared. She's not a walking machine. She's not, people equate her to Master Chief. But we, first off, don't even know if Master Chief's human or not, which really technically even Microsoft thinks said he did, what Bungie and all that said he was. But we've seen more emotions from her because she's human, and he's technically human too. People equate it to oh, she's supposed to be an emotionless character and just die hard, hardened like bounty hunter, but she's still human. She still has emotions. She still has family and friends. Not family in the sense blood related, but she grew attached to like the Galactic Federation and other bounty hunters and stuff like that. She is human. She has emotions. So her acting like that is normal. How they portrayed it, maybe not so much. I can understand it being a little too much, and how we're breaking down with Ridley after fighting him a few times up to that point. But I think how I would correlate that with is like Super Metroid was the first time he actually died in the series. It depends on if you include the Prime games in the canon or not. I don't know how, because Prime's like retro and whatnot, like how the creators from Nintendo, the originators of the series, view it and whatnot. But it depends on how you view the timeline. But really, any time before that could probably have been viewed as just Ridley being beaten. Like, I understand it's not perfect. It is little bit too excessive anime or whatever. But her being at least somewhat emotional, somewhat PTSD makes some sense. And also Adam, like people are like, oh, Adam, the commanding officer's controlling her, and so man, blah, 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 commanding officer is controlling, she can't do the powers, she has to listen to him. That was his team's mission. He knows she's a walking nuke. She could blow them all up if she went all out with her suit. So I think it's more of a creative reason, because most Metroid games tend to have Samus just get attacked and her armor get damaged and lose her powers. This, I think, was at least a creative way of doing it without being like, oh, well, Samus's armor got beaten, she has to reclaim all her powers. I think that's a little done to death in the series. So they took an original aspect of it and kind of built it in the way like she listened to him because it was his mission. He used to be her commanding officer. She listened to him because she trusted him, so on and so forth, even though the whole lava thing with the heat suit was a little stupid, but whatever. Like I said, it's not perfect, but I think this game gets a little too much hate. Is it perfect? Is it a good game? Debatable. It's not great, but I say at least it's debatably good. The gameplay is pretty fun, and overall the characters are interesting. And the story kind of takes its own approach, whatever, Team Ninja. Like I said, does it deserve hate? Sure. I understand where the hate's coming from. I see where the complaint's coming from. But is it a bit excessive? Yes. And I think it didn't deserve as much hate as it got. The second game on this list that I feel gets a little too much hate goes to Mass Effect 3. From one space game to the next. The Mass Effect series from BioWare is a really epic space RPG series after they did like the Knights of the Old Republic and whatnot. It's a beloved series. I love the games. It's a good series. And you get all your choices, your teammates, and customization and space battles and everything. I think the only complaint I ever heard about this game was basically from the ending, how it ended. And people were like, oh, it felt like they just pretty much, no matter what they did in the series and who they saved and what decisions they made, it all ended up the same way. And they hated how this game ended. And they complained and complained and complained until BioWare, when it made like an extended DLC free addition to the story ending or something. I forgot exactly what happened back in the day, because I didn't play this game until well after that. I didn't play the series until well after the thing. I heard about it, and I played a little bit of the first one with my cousin, I think, at the time, but I didn't play it myself so much. I love the series. I think the fans and gamers being like that and being all about like an ending, I understand like you want maybe a little bit more options or choice, and you didn't like how it ended or how it affected the characters and made them act and whatnot, but it didn't deserve that much hate, and it was still gameplay-wise pretty good. It's not Mass Effect 2, which is the best in the series, but it's nowhere near Mass Effect Andromeda and everything, which is complete trash. And I think just getting overworked on the ending of the game, I think that was the only aspect of this game, and maybe some things that people compare, like, oh, it's not as good as 2, but Uncharted 3 is not as good as Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 3 is still a fun game in its own right. So, games like that, like the third game or the next game in the series isn't as good as an older game in the series. Like, they have their own good aspects, and I'm not going to complain all that much. But yeah, Mass Effect 3 was still a great game in its own right. It had a few issues here and there, but most of them were fixed when they added the ending to it, and it was mostly just that ending that people were going after. So, yeah, that's all it really is. And I think it didn't deserve as much hate as it got. Number 3 goes to another Nintendo game, another Nintendo series that they heavily utilize now. And one of the most recent games in the series had so much confliction between who liked it and who didn't like it. And a lot of people consider it the worst in the series. I sure as hell wouldn't. I still thought it was a good game, and I still enjoyed it myself, which is the reason why I put it on this list. But people had criticisms of it all the same. And that goes to Fire Emblem Fates. Oh, Fire Emblem Fates. Now, am I saying it's perfect? No, I said that the same thing with freaking Metroid Other M and Mass Effect 3, and the games out there, nothing's perfect. They always have little bits of issues. But Fire Emblem Fates is normally, like, people don't really like, I've seen online, if I recall, people didn't like the characters, they didn't like the child system, and they thought the supports to marriage and, like, shipping was a little pushed. and some of the story elements and like how the story went and how Corrin acted and whatnot. People say Corrin's the worst main character of any Fire Emblem game. I haven't played all of them, so I don't know, but Corrin's one of the weaker ones, I would say, but he or she is sure as hell not, I think, the worst. I think there's a few I would probably say worse, and a lot of people do come up with Roy. People would name Roy as a bad lead too, but I enjoyed the game. But I like all Fire Emblem games I played. I'm not very that harsh on the series, except for maybe Shadow Dragon, which I didn't really like Shadow Dragon all that much, which was mostly because of the art style, which I thought was crap. But overall, most of the Fire Emblem games we got here in America and outside of Japan, I liked and I thought were cool. Cool characters, cool story. And I like this game I like the story elements. When I played through Birthright, which a lot of people hate because it's too easy and whatnot, I actually got into the story. Was it perfect? Did it not have issues? No. There's some people like, yeah, that seems a little but like it kept me interested enough to play to the end. In the game, the stories and the characters I actually love. I think they're some of the better ones in the series. Are there some better? Yeah, but there's a lot that are worse too. And I like the game, I like the series and the characters. I think, yeah, the children's system was a little pushed, and I'm not saying all Fire Emblem games need to have the children's system, but the support thing, supports have been a standard in the series since frickin' forever, and the whole building up someone to get married to in a relationship, which is like an extension of the support system, I think is an idea too that should be, it's a product of the series. It's a standard in the series now. The children units not so much, but I understand it's a little forced. Like Awakening did it better with the whole time travel thing, and Genealogy was a series start to children, to the second generation for the second half of the game. The whole different universe reality, growing up children in different timelines that make them get older faster and whatnot. Yeah, it's a bit excessive, but I like the idea. It's somewhat creative, but I can understand one of the stupider aspects of it. But I liked a lot of the children units in the game, so it kind of equals out to like stuff I didn't like, stuff I did like. But I do think it's a little too much hate because like supports are standard in the series. Relationships are pretty much a standard in the series. Children not so much, but children are in enough games that it is a standard in the series, and we're going to see future Fire Emblem games with being able to have children, the second generation people continuing games, no matter how they do it. But like those complaints were stupid, and then like people didn't like the characters in the story, which like sometimes it's not your thing. Like maybe it's just not you or something. Like it depends on who writes the game and whatnot. And people didn't like the censorship, which that aspect I actually agree with. The English version of this game got censored, which I'm glad Nintendo pretty much when it came to Shadows of Valentia and Three Houses actually did not use the same team to localize it. And whatnot. But like I said, is it perfect? No. And is it the best Fire Emblem game? Far from it. But the gameplay they have in this game is actually really fun. I think the gameplay aspect is fun. I like the characters and the story and they get into it. And like I like the customization, making my own castle, going online, battling other people's castles, the little extras they added to the game, the meat and potatoes of the game, the little side dishes to support like a full packaged game. I actually liked, and it's not my favorite game in the series, but I enjoyed it enough to be maybe higher up. And I think it's a little too much hate. Just saying, it's a little too much hate. Number 4, we'll go to another series where one of the more recent entries, people dog like recent entries in the series because they don't it's not as similar to the older games in the series. And I agree, it gets in the way sometimes, but it still had some fun characters and interesting aspects to it. Maybe not as much as maybe other recent entries in the series. But I don't think Resident Evil 6 deserved as much hate as it got. Like, people are like, oh, recent Resident Evil's too action-y. They make it too much of an action film. They're supposed to be survival horror. Where's the horror? Where's the scares? And to be fair, this aspect of, Resident Evil started with Resident Evil 4, which is one of the most beloved games in the series. And I understand that game balanced action and horror at least a little bit more than this game, as well as Resident Evil 5 did too, and then Resident Evil 7 did the first person and went super horror. But this had some horror to it as well. Mostly, I think, in Leon's case. I think Leon's story was a little bit more horror-based. If you're going to play, like, Jake's story or, Chris's story and even Ada's story, they're all more action-oriented, but I think there was at least some horror enough in there to kind of make it a little bit scary, and I do believe Leon's story focuses a little bit more on the horror. And I like the aspect of this game being all these different characters in the same universe, like the same storyline. You're seeing the same story from different perspectives. I thought that was cool. And the gameplay is still good. It's an improvement, I think, over 4 and 5. Like, them using that third-person, more action-y thing, they were able to improve it with each entry. And while the story may not have been as good as, say, 4 and 5, I think the gameplay had, at least the gameplay in co-op, I think people found enjoyment out of that. And there were good elements in the story and good elements of the characters. And seeing Leon and Chris pretty much confront each other, and Wesker's illegitimate, crazy son, with powers, Jake and whatnot. I think the story was pretty good and a good continuation of it. And I would like to see them go back to this style again. I'm hoping, I would like to still see what Resident Evil 7 did with the first-person stuff, but I'd like to see a balance, and I'd like to see them do this, but maybe add a little bit more horror to this. And with them doing the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 and throwing a lot more horror into the more action-y third-person shooting version of it, if a future Resident Evil game has the whole, action-y, third-person stuff, we at least can probably hope more horror is going to be in it. So there's, that. And it's just I thought it was fun. And that's as much as and I liked some of the characters. I actually like Jake. A lot of people don't like Jake. I actually like Jake. I think it's pretty cool. I wish, he would still have met his father and done some story with Wesker being brought back, but I don't know. Yeah, whatever. And number 5 goes to yet another Nintendo game from a major Nintendo series. It's been around since 1986, and an entry of it recently received a lot of flack for one major reason. Well, two major reasons. But I actually really loved it. It's one of my favorite games in said series, and I love that series so much. And that goes to Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I consider The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword my second favorite Zelda game of all time. Why? The story, the characters, the art style, the music, and I like the one-to-one motion plus, controls, like the Wii Remote Plus controls and whatnot. I thought it was pretty cool. A lot of people dog on it because of it being super motion-y and you have to do it for everything, and they say, oh, the controls are not perfect, they're horrible, blah, 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 blah. I never had too much of a problem with it. I had a problem here and there where maybe the controls got jacked up and I had to go and reset the controls and balance them, rebalance and reconfigure them and whatnot. But I got that so little. I like the game, and people say, oh, it's too linear, which if you've played most recent Zelda games, there's a lot of linear Zelda games. And there's also, but like I said, Zelda varies. Zelda's not one thing. Breath of the Wild is super open world with very little story, which is the original Legend of Zelda from the NES. But then you have more action, story-based ones like Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker. A lot of the 3D era ones were more story-driven recently. And they're not they're all super open. Some of them are very, very closed off, like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time are not super more open than this. I know this was very linear because you basically revisit the same 3 places over and over again, just opening new areas to get to new dungeons and whatnot. And I thought that was, it was fine. But like I said, it's a one-game thing, and they focus so heavily on the story and the world and the world building and whatnot. I'm I could let it go for one time because a lot of the game's focus was on the motion control, which I actually loved, using the one-to-one sword and using the bow and the slingshot and the whip and everything. And the beetle. I thought it was all pretty cool. And I love the characters, especially. I love this. One of probably my favorite Zelda, besides Tetra. Girahim's an awesome villain. Demise is pretty cool. Except for fighting the one version of him, the imprisoned one, so many times, fighting them, the bosses, and like I said, I agree that it's a little bit much, they reuse a little bit of stuff too much and it's too linear, but I don't think that was much of a problem because it was more world building. You still got to see new stuff and still fought new bosses, still went to new temples. Probably some of my favorite temples in the Legend of Zelda series were in this one. The Ancient Cistern, being one of them. That was a really good temple. Like I said, it's not perfect. I understand the controls aren't perfect, and they're not everyone's cup of tea being super motion controls, but I would love to see them kind of bring this back in a future Legend of Zelda game, the controls. And I love the art style being more impressionist art, and the characters, some of my favorite in the series, Groose, Girahim, this version of Link, this version of Zelda, Zelda's dad, so on and so forth, Demise. And I just thought it was a cool game. I just liked it, and I'm not the only one in on that. I'm actually happy that there's a lot of other gamers out there, Zelda fans or otherwise, that like Skyward Sword. And I do hope that they do an HD version of it, like they did with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. Please, Nintendo, please. And that's it. That is my 5 games I feel get a little too much hate. Resident Evil 6, Fire Emblem Fates, Mass Effect 3, Metroid Other M, and Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. Hope you guys like this video. Put in the comment section what you guys think. Do you guys think these games deserve the hate they get? What about these games do you hate? What about these games do you love? And what other games out there do you think have a little too much hate to them? Put in the comment section below. We can discuss it on there. My name is Sniper Fun. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to. Have a lovely day. And see you all later in the next video.